Hi, everyone. This is Steven Sentries, writer-producer behind Paratactic Pictures and the host of the Paratactic Podcast. Today's guest is Sandy Hunter. Sandy is one of my closest collaborators in New Brunswick's film community, and honestly, he's one of the most experienced and insightful producers in New Brunswick's film industry. Sandy takes us on a journey through his career in creative industries over the past 30 years. But Sandy's perspectives and insights also kind of work as a cultural tour of the evolving media landscapes in the film industry over the past 30 years. And we end by sharing stories about Sandy and I producing Car Wash Wars together, along with two of Sandy's TV series being released on Bell 5 this year. Honestly, Sandy's been one of the biggest supporters of my work, and one of the collaborators who has most consistently believed in me and brought me along for the ride. Going deep into his history and talking through the work we've done together thus far, it really enforced what I already knew about Sandy. His career reflects a consistent pattern of hard work and a genuine commitment to supporting people he trusts and collaborates with. So, without further ado, here is Sandy Hunter on episode 8 of the Paratactic Podcast. Sandy Hunter. Sandy.
Good morning, Steven. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
No problem. You've been one of the people since I started working in this industry in New Brunswick in 2022. You have been one of my biggest supporters. A lot of my firsts, I think, I can associate with you in that, like, when you were producing season 1 of Odons. Those are the first scripts that I wrote that went to camera. Since starting Paratactic Pictures, you have been a supporter and ally, a collaborator and partner. So anyway, I really appreciate you, and I always start with unadulterated praise of my subjects. So
let me reciprocate. I think when I first met you here in St. John, I believe at the beginning of 2022, I was immediately taken with not just your writing ability, but your creativity and drive and ability to, frankly, multitask, which here in New Brunswick is an essential skill.
Right.
So going back to the Odons opportunity, that project, we had Jimmy McKinley. He had pitched the show to Bell 5, a show about the pub in Miramichi. He had a writing partner who had a lot of ideas, but putting those ideas in a script, I don't think that it was there. So I was happy to bring you on board, and I think you were able to translate Jimmy and his partner's ideas into scripts that resulted in a show that we were proud of on season 1. Of course, we only worked on season 1. We kind of pivoted and went off. I supported you on your Paratactic production, Car Wash Wars. And I think from there, it's really just flourished. I wish more of the projects that we've written and tried to pitch and develop had gone to camera, but I'm optimistic that our future will bear fruit.
Yes, I have hope that 2026 will be a big year for Car Wash Wars and the other things we've got in the pipeline. I mean, the ebbs and flows of the industry, it's, I think for me, predominantly being a writer for the past 10, 15 years, trying to build that craft, but really kind of learning the business side, the producing side of the industry. Being positioned as a writer on projects that you're writing in the industry is a different thing than, writing a poetry collection that will never see the light of day. So it's, I find in my experience thus far, I'm realizing now that I'm like 3-4 years into it, the ebbs and flows of the industry and how, when it's good, it's awesome. When it's bad, it's terrible. And it's a hurry up and wait type of situation. In your experience, like someone that's kind of been in the industry in a variety of roles, companies, if you could talk through, like, this is a segue into your backstory of like...
I can give you a sort of an abbreviated backstory. Full disclosure, I will be 51 next month, so it's a bit of a ponderous tale. So I'll abbreviate. I grew up in New Brunswick in a place called Florenceville. Came of age as a young kid in the 80s in the VHS era, pre-cable even, put it in perspective, pre-internet. So, I was a big VHS kid. My dad got us VCR in the early days, and we had a strangely good video store in town. I'm not sure how that happened, but I was able to watch a lot of new releases and classic films, and I really just fell in love with movies. And I now, even though at that time there probably was something of an industry going on in New Brunswick in that era, the old tax credit era, I didn't realize that there was ever an opportunity to work in film and or TV in New Brunswick. So I went to Carleton University, much like yourself. I graduated from the School of Journalism, And after some muddling about and a brief sojourn in South America after university, I found myself working for a company called Brunico Communications in Toronto, which at that time was the largest publisher of film and industry trade magazines in Canada. And I went to work for a commercial production trade magazine that was launched called Boards. And I was, the young cub reporter. Spent a lot of time cold calling people on the phone, just trying to dig up stories and get reels of directors. And I'm proud to say that after a year or two, we really took off, and we were able to not only, link up with some of the biggest ad agencies in the United States and the UK and beyond. We were able to connect with directors that, have gone on to influence my entire career. I was able to interview the likes of Spike Jonze, Michel Gondry, and others who at that time had emerged from the thriving music video scene to go into advertising and have all since gone on to make movies. Although, Spike Jonze, please make another movie. It's been too long. From there, I was hired away to go work for a related, less advertising-driven magazine and film festival based out of the U.S. called RES, R-E-S. This RES Fest magazine and touring film festival, which was focused on, again, this is the early 2000s. Whoa, you can make films digitally now? Wow. I, continued as a journalist interviewing directors, finding great content. But really through that, I became a programmer because of the touring film festival and because of the Res DVD that was bundled with our magazine. I was in charge of programming the music videos and short films, finding them, also doing the paperwork, getting the materials, putting them out on a DVD that was published with the magazine, and working with a great team of people to program the film festival, which we toured to, I think at its peak, 30 cities around the world, brought that to Canada. Through that experience, being a bit of what they called a director collector in those days and knowing who the good directors were, I was approached along with a friend of mine, Matt Eastman, who was a director I knew in Toronto, to create Soft Citizen by a leading commercial production house, Radke Films. They were looking for an incubator to bring up new directors through music videos and branded content, which, again, new term in the early 2000s. So I went out and hired the best group of directors I could, including my business partner, Matt Eastman, and we created Soft Citizen, which I'm proud to say is still going now. We worked for 2 years and made probably 20 projects over 2 years. We were able to bring a few British music videos to Canada to produce. Probably the one I'm proudest of, I'm proud of them all, was The Year of the Rat for Badly Drawn Boy. We worked with Montreal-based animator Monkmas and an animation team from Montreal as well called Fluorescent Hill to create an animated music video for Badly Drawn Boy. And that music video did great, went all over the world, and we won Best Music Video at South by Southwest in 2005. That said, I wasn't making any money. Was struggling financially, trying to make these music videos and working as an independent programmer. So at that time, Alliance Atlantis was looking to delve into digital video and short form content and, bring TV to the internet.
So I kind of wanted to check in on that because, it seems like the recurring theme, which I find interesting in just conversations with you and the way you engage with media in a professional sense, you were talking about, pre-VHS and pre-cable, you have a sense of the changing trends in the way media has been, produced and consumed. And in that kind of 90s, early 2000s era of the music videos, that's something for me growing up, it was on TV when I was a kid, and I kind of watched it fade away. What was that time like, and when did that kind of it as a viable business model start to taper off, and how did it feel like when you kind of transitioned into Alliance Atlantis kind of world?
Well, I think it was really about the ability, video streaming, the rise of YouTube. I think was a nail in the coffin of what we were trying to do, both in terms of much music being an outlet, or MTV and other markets. Those same music videos were being put on YouTube. People would gravitate there so they could watch them when they want. I remember people used to tape The Wedge, which was the alternative, funky Sukyan Lee-driven program on Much Music, and because they would want to be able to watch a music video again. That was why we started doing the Res DVD, to put the best music videos on the globe out on a bi-monthly way, and then we would kind of take the best of those and put them in the Res Fest tour that would go out once a year. And so that was special because there was access and finding those pieces of content was difficult, but they were definitely art. They definitely were associated with bands that people were interested in, directors that people were interested in. They were special. But I think really the rise of streaming, which at that time was largely relegated to YouTube and other sort of plug and play solutions that corporate entities would have, was the changing of the tide. And I think also at that time, that's when, iTunes began selling music online in single format. It was just the digitization of media in the early 2000s flipped everything.
The DVD thing is such a good idea because, like, even I remember growing up it being like, if you're watching a music video, you feel very lucky to be able to record something that you can watch again, or same thing with the cassette. I find that to be a very, very innovative idea to kind of integrate the music video kind of industry into like the DVD sales space. Like, I think that's
we
really
also we did a whole, like, through Palm, which was the parent company of Rez at that time, there was a director's label DVD series where the likes of Spike Jonze or Chris Cunningham or Michel Gondry or many others, we licensed all their best music videos from the labels, and we had a very good business selling them because people were like, knew who Spike Jonze was. He had just done Being John Malkovich and was going into adaptation at that time. When that content got dumped on YouTube and the sort of viral engine began, great for getting the word out and seeing the work and, music videos as marketing vehicle for music. Bad for the business of music videos. Yeah. As we've seen, like, music videos still exist today, but that sort of golden era of the narrative weirdo music video that you probably remember, like a lot of electronic artists, but a lot of other artists played in it, like the White Stripes did many really cool videos at that time as well. Where are those now? That digitization, both of the music industry and of short form video content, resulted in a change that not necessarily good or bad, but it was a change that I needed to adapt to. And my then wife and I were trying to buy a home in Toronto, which even 20 some years ago was no mean feat, still expensive. So I decided to to try and take a corporate job that was related to my skill set so I could see where my career would go. And that's when I went to Alliance Atlantis. Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like this is and I'd like to hear a little bit like the experience, the transition into like a corporate setting and what that was like. A very kind of innovative, kind of entrepreneurial drive. How did that integrate into the corporate? Like, what was lost, what was gained in that setting?
When we started the Soft Citizen company prior to me moving to Alliance Atlantis, we didn't know what we were doing starting a company. We were in our 20s. We had some backers. We had a lot of good ideas, but we had zero idea about how to run a company and make money. I'm proud to say Soft Citizen is still going today under proper management by sophisticated adults. So for the transition was, going from, a weird warehouse basement on the east side of Toronto to up to Bloor Street, to 121 Bloor Street East, and sitting in a cubicle on the 9th floor, then the 11th floor, and managing a small team within a corporate context and working primarily with this team at Showcase, which at that time, the original home of the Trailer Park Boys, greenlit it, and many other shows. I think 6 original shows a year being greenlit by Showcase, and I was sort of the digital dude, get it out on the web. But it was, it's a corporate setting, and, you're plugging into a larger machine. So, say there's a new Trailer Park Boys season coming out. Okay, let's get the boys to do a series of webisodes, as we called them in those days, digital shorts or digital series as they're known today. So I started making those digital series. At the same time, I had kept some of my side businesses going, and we did brand off the side of our desk. We did Nike would need a branded content piece, so I would find them a director, and we would do an Air Force One animated short. My old friend, collaborator Chris Hutzel came in and did that. It went to the Saatchi New Directors Showcase in Cannes. So I kind of always had a bit of a side hustle mentality. That continued for about 3 years until such time as Alliance Atlantis, which older people will know the company. It's been gone a long time now. I think the takeover by CanWest Global was in 2009. And that's when I had the opportunity to produce something. Again, my old friend from university, Spencer Tripp, he was the director of communications of Greenpeace Canada. At that time, the tar sands of Alberta people were really concerned, and it just started becoming this mega project that we now take for granted. But then it was like, wow, huge boon economically, environmentally fraught. As you can imagine, Greenpeace were not happy. So we spitballed the idea of creating a documentary funded by Greenpeace, almost as a branded content piece, but content. And during that takeover time, while we waited for the other shoe to drop at CanWest Global, I worked with Greenpeace. We got director Peter Metler, and we sent him up to the tar sands. We, surreptitiously hired a helicopter, brought in an aerial shooter from the States, and buzzed the tar sands for several days and did a number of other shoots in the area. Put that film out, which became Petropolis, Aerial Perspectives on the Alberta Tar Sands. And we were able to achieve a premiere at TIFF in 2009. And I think one of the other greatest outcomes of that film, which again was created sort of in this time of transition, I wasn't sure what the future would hold, did that. And Neil Young went on to license it for his tour at that time. And it was nationally shown. And my girlfriend was going to OCAD in those days. Yeah. She studied the film. So it was a really proud moment. We got into TIFF, which obviously as a filmmaker in Canada is the gold standard. And, we even nominated for a Genie Award. Genies are now what they call the Canadian Screen Awards. We lost. It's an honor to be nominated, as the wags say. So after that, though, I knew I was worried about the change with CanWest Global, as were many, because, Alliance Atlantis there was a real entrepreneurial spirit there. Michael McMillan, who now owns Blue Ant Media, ran the company. And I doubt he'd say he's a mentor to me, but he really influenced how I approach business and our business, because he's far wilder than I could ever be. He goes to Burning Man every year, But he had that entrepreneurial spirit, even though he was operating at this big scale. And I really learned from him that you don't, especially in our industry, you don't need to necessarily become a banker to become a businessman.
Right.
You can straddle the creative with business. I've taken that with me. However, my entrepreneurial days were behind me, because at that time, iTunes, which had launched in Canada on the music side by Apple, again, for you young people, that was when CDs went bye-bye and people could buy tracks and albums on iTunes. They were moving into TV and movies. They wanted a programmer to come on board, and I managed, thanks to my friend Zach Feldberg and his friend Jen Walsh. Zach Feldberg worked at Alliance Atlantis at that time. Jen Walsh was a music executive who'd gone to the iTunes music side. They knew each other. We met through Zach. She's like, you should come work at iTunes with us and be our TV guy. So I came over, and I was hired for Canada and Australia film and TV programmer role to kind of build up the store. And, at that point, that was very entrepreneurial. There was like 6 of us in a small office on King Street West. People that had been drawn from the Canadian media industry, trying to patch this thing together for our bosses down in Cupertino, California.
So at that point at Apple, it was an 8-year kind of phase where you eventually became the head of Apple TV Canada?
Well, I worked there ultimately 12 years. I started as a programmer, worked my way up to programming manager. Eventually, both the Australians and the Canadians said enough is enough. While we are similar markets, the time zone is killing us. Too many midnight phone calls. So I became programming manager for Canada, and eventually became the manager for the Canadian transactional business. Believe it or not, huge business. When Breaking Bad came out, we were making millions.
Right.
We were one of the main ways to watch a day after broadcast by selling season passes.
Okay.
So that early golden age of TV, along with the Avengers were coming out at that time. Like it was a great time, and people were buying and renting stuff as streaming was really ramping up. Eventually, we rebranded to Apple TV. I participated in the launch of that, and being sort of the Canadian representative for a multinational, so much great about it. But Canada, we were always viewed as, the Americans had a very sort of paternalistic look at Canada as not quite the 51st state, but an add-on. Oh, the Canadians like what Americans do. I was always a champion of Canadian content on the program. I'd been hired to make it Canadian. I always worked with the likes of Telefilm, the Canadian broadcasters, be it Bell, Chorus at that time, and of course CBC and others, working to highlight Canadian content on the platform. We'll talk about Canadian movies, but It's hard to get them out to the market. So we were an essential part of that. Then we moved into original content, and I was very passionate about trying to find a way to make a Canadian show or movie for Apple TV Plus. Obviously, it was early days; we were just starting, and there was a small slate. So I really was pushing a lot to try and get Canadian content, making progress, but wasn't great. Then COVID hit, and then the one piece of content we were able to do actually came out, Come From Away. The famed Newfoundland musical just finished prior to COVID a Tony Award-winning run on Broadway after very successful run in Canada and other markets. And a really good friend and collaborator of mine, Dan Lowy, was working at E1. They had the rights to Come From Away. Hamilton had just been filmed in that sort of boxed-in COVID no audience sense and put out on streaming on Disney Plus. We decided to do that for Come From Away. Dan and I worked to get that in and try and get a green light and campaigned hard with the people in Los Angeles that were the gatekeepers at Apple TV Plus. Got it done. We pushed the project in, and then, once it kind of went into the content mill of Apple, our role was done.
Yeah.
Which I was sad for because I came from a content creation background, and I was hopeful I could get in there.
As you're saying this, and I think for you, it's interesting. Like throughout that time, you've so many various kind of roles, companies, experiences, and then you ultimately, when you left Apple, you moved back home, started Cazador. So this other transition back to moving back home, starting your own company and trying to make it in New Brunswick. Yeah, when did that happen? And looking back, like how has that gone?
Well, I moved back almost 5 years ago. COVID was still in full swing. I'd always wanted to come back from New Brunswick. I remember, after I'd been at Apple for long enough, I think I was coming back. I was, working remote for up to a month every summer, coming and visiting my family, who are, of course, all still here in New Brunswick. My brother's in Ottawa. Hi, Greg. But everyone else is here in New Brunswick. My parents were getting older. I knew that I was in my late 40s by then, and I knew that if I was going to try and get back into production and being a creative and making things happen under my own steam, and perhaps going back from the learnings from 20 years ago when I started Soft Citizen and made some good content but made no money, let's see if I could do it again. I had come back during 2020 for a visit, did the full quarantine at the border, and then after whatever it was, 2 weeks of quarantining, I stayed for another 2 weeks, and I started looking for properties. I wanted to find a place of my own in New Brunswick, but I also went and visited a lot of people and touched in, including with my old boss, Sally McIntosh, who I worked at a nature center on, the Fallsbrook Center. She taught me how to use a chainsaw. Still kind of know how to do it. And I met her son, who I'm 10 years older, Clem McIntosh. I knew him as a kid. He probably would have been 10 when I was 20 working there. He was all grown up. And he worked in film and TV and had fled New York to go back and hide out in New Brunswick during COVID. And we reconnected and instantly hit it off. And he was like, "You got to come back to New Brunswick. Let's try and do this." And I said, "Okay, wow." And I saw that, the New Brunswick government did have an incentive, so there would potentially be some financial support from the province. It gave me a little bit of confidence that I wouldn't be in it alone, because one thing I know about this industry is it's a team sport. It's all about collaboration, and you need people around you. You can't do it yourself. So I came back, started the company up. Clem and I did a small commercial project for the province of New Brunswick based around the popularity of the book Waterfalls of New Brunswick, which touched both of us. And we made that. We were developing other projects. And at the same time, Hemmings House, Greg Hemmings and Steve Foster, we got on their radar somehow. I'm not exactly sure how it happened. It's New Brunswick's a small place.
Yeah, they're like a rite of passage, for me, like introduction into the film industry here. Well, also like for experienced folks like you, Clem, Vanessa King as well. Like they're an introduction into like a reintroduction into the scene here.
Well, I mean, they in the English language market, they are the longest standing and most important production company in New Brunswick. There's obviously the French ecosystem as well, where there's other players, but they reached out to us. They were interested in kickstarting their long form business. They do a lot of TV commercials. So Clem and I teamed up with them. I had Cazador. Clem and I had our brand together, Cultivation Pictures, which is an homage to both of our family's farming roots. And then we worked with Hemmings for a year on contract, trying to develop projects. Numerous ones, development is a slog. But I'm proud to say that one of those projects came to fruition, and we actually screened it here in St. John last night, What We Dreamed of Then, Taylor Olson's film. So they've been key collaborators of mine, Greg Hemmings and Steve Foster, who's my fellow producer on What We Dreamed of Then, Taylor Olson's film. And I met you through them too, Stephen.
Yes.
I mean, you had that same rite of passage when you moved to St. John, wanted to dip your toe in the industry. They found you. I mean, I think they're really, especially in the St. John scene, I think they're a key moment, an inflection point of other people driven to make high quality work and put New Brunswick on the map. And it was during that time that Steve and Greg had been working with Taylor Olson, who was on my radar along with Jeremy Larder as some of the directors that I knew from the Maritimes that I thought I'd like to work with. Through Steve and Greg, I got the chance to meet with Taylor and say, look, we want to make a movie. What do you got?
Yeah.
And the movie that was then called Unseen was something that Taylor had been working on. So we teamed up. Then under Hemmings, although eventually Cazador became a co-producer, we took the script, developed it with a grant from the the province of New Brunswick, kind of shopped it around to everyone who would listen, got some nibbles, then went to the Atlantic International Film Festival, continued some of those conversations, and probably 2-3 months later, after some back and forth, we were able to get a pre-sale by Bell Media's Crave. I had some contacts there. I was able to get in the door. Plus, Taylor's script was great.
Yeah.
And his early work had caught people's imagination. That pre-sale triggered everything. Applied for telefilm, got the telefilm, and stacked it all up. And as you well know, as our second AD and production coordinator on that project, made a movie right here in St. John in 2024.
Yeah, and I feel like it's an interesting segue into what you just described is the network and the relationships that you built makes you a very valuable executive producer, and really kind of seeing a project and knowing the first step to get some interest, get it moving forward, and potentially kind of eventually get it green lit. But the other thing, while working on Unseen, or while working on then Unseen, now called What We Dreamed of Then, your producer kind of role and more hands-on experience really showed. And the leadership that you have in those settings when pressure's on, time crunch is on, you are really right there with production office and crew in the trenches, getting your hands dirty. And I feel like that's something you're not just an executive producer. You can you are doing the hands-on work and you have the skills to do it.
The executive producer credit is nice. It's a courtesy credit largely. It doesn't matter to me. I literally grew up getting my hands dirty. You don't get anything but dirty gathering eggs from 25,000 chickens. My whole life has been driven by work, and I don't think we have the luxury in New Brunswick at the stage we're at. New Brunswick has a long way to go before we are competitive with even Newfoundland or Prince Edward Island, and all have to roll up our sleeves and do the work. And the idea of being an executive producer is really you're some guy that's gotten a deal done that helps make the project go forward. And everything I've been able to do, going back to one of the first couple productions that we did, Clem and I did a project called Wabanaki Modern with the Beaverbrook Art Gallery. That was Clem and me and a few crew members. We managed to get a development grant for a project that was very near and dear to us, Justice, which is a rural action comedy vigilante series that we filmed a proof of concept for. Incidentally, the first time I ever really worked with Taylor. I think a big part of it for me, just to kind of, before we get into the smokes by the dumpster level of production, my entire career has been about spotting talent. You're a prime example of that, Stephen. I saw your talent, skill, and gift, and your good nature as well, which I think is a really important part of it, because there's lots of talented people who are dicks. Don't want to have to work with them. That talent spotting piece is always key for me, and I think I've been able to apply that to crew, other people like Taylor. When Jimmy came around with Odons, I could tell he was funny. And I knew that he had something. You've got to associate yourself with people that are smarter than you, funnier than you, harder working than you, and that's the way to lead. And I've always believed in that, the old chestnut, work with people who are smarter than you. Think about Megan Tellison, great producer here in St. John that I've worked with on numerous projects. She's smarter than me. And she
intimidatingly competent at production.
I mean, that's who you want.
Yeah.
And she has a saying, does that person have farm in them in terms of how hard they'll work?
Yeah.
She's out there rolling up her sleeves too as a producer.
Yeah.
And I think I learned a lot from her about what it takes to get it done in New Brunswick. You got 20 people, 30 people on set, and you're trying to do something at a high level. Everybody works.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, when the van broke down and we were like crawling around in the middle of the night because the keys were locked inside of it at midnight when we had a 6 a.m. call time. That needed to be done. I didn't want to ask anybody else. Well, I asked you to do it. Thank you. You Googled how to break into the back of the Dodge Caravan, which was nice. And we got it. We got in and we got the van back on the road when we needed it.
Yeah.
It's just getting it done.
Yeah, there's no cookie cutter way. There's no pre-conceived plan. You just have to go with what feels right and own that choice.
And you can't throw money at it.
Yeah.
You can throw. There's no money.
Elbow grease.
You have to do it yourself.
Yeah. So I feel like I want to start talking about the projects you got going on.
Sure.
So it's I think quickly, I've worked with you as an AD writer and in production.
Producer.
As a producer on, a look at a prayer, Brooklyn Story. If we could do a quick run through of those two projects.
Sure. So Bell Fibe, while it's a community broadcaster that Bell Canada, not Bell Media, funds projects in sort of regional centers and areas of the country where they have a broadcast footprint. Frankly, without Bell Fibe, I would just say, and Paul Gardner's support, we'd be nowhere. Bell Fibe can be frustrating because only Bell subscribers can see it, the content. But they have helped create the baseline of an industry here. Odon's Season 1, which we worked on, our first collaboration. Car Wash Wars, a project that Clem McIntosh and I did through Cultivation. Backyard History, based around Andrew McLean's podcast. Brooklyn is a great New Brunswick story, we don't need to retell the story of the car manufacturer right here in St. John, but Clem and I have been fascinated with the story. So as sort of a follow-up to Backyard History, we pitched a 3-part doc series, definitely a small budget, but it's an archival and interview-based doc series that's going forward. We managed to track down Malcolm Bricklin, living in Melbourne, Florida at 86, and went down into the heart of Trump's America last summer to interview Malcolm, and spent the rest of the summer and fall getting the rest of the interviews locked down with everyone from people that worked at the factory in St. John to people who've written books to politicians active at that time. And at the same time, I've been acquiring and planning out archival content, such as Pendentium's 1974 corporate industrial 16mm film, The Brooklyn Story. And, working with you, you're on it as in a creative and production management role, helping Clem and Naomi and Xavier. Shout outs to Naomi and Xavier back in Fredericton. We're hard at work in the edit and writing phase to get everything ready. On the other end, the power of the internet strikes yet again. I'd done some work, and a writer out of Prince Edward Island named Chris Dart, a.k.a. Chris Williams, a.k.a. Chris Johansson. Shout outs to Chris, whoever and wherever you are. He had a show called Some Greasy that he was writing up. He is a playwright. I don't know how he heard about me. I think he'd heard about O'Donn's or something. And he pitched me Some Greasy. I liked it. It was not for Bell. It would have been too expensive, too many locations, too many casts. Yeah. But he had pitched it to Bell and Paul Gardner and his team at Bell as well. And Paul was like, something more, achievable. So Chris came up with the idea for A Lick and a Prayer, sort of a coastal series about a murder mystery in a small town, North Rustico. It's a very quaint town. We've been there now. Of course, we were there in the off season. It was cold. So anyway, Chris approached me and was like, "Look, I think Bell wants to make the show. I don't know how to do it." He knew that I liked his stuff, so we teamed up. And Cazador came on board with his company, Dart Productions, to produce our first show on Prince Edward Island. And so yourself, Megan, Naomi, sweet Patrick Forrestal, the beautifully coiffed Andrew McCrae, some of us New Brunswickers trundled out and linked up with Chris, a really gifted young director named Daniel Brown out of Prince Edward Island, and a team on PEI. Great crew out there. We made a lot of new friends, I think.
Oh, totally.
Great people. And we went up due to scheduling concerns, probably almost too late in the season, late November, early December, to film A Lick and a Prayer for a week up at the North Rustico Lions Club. Yeah. And, brought the cast up there, and it was great until the snow came, and it was a bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, the drive home, the snow kind of held off until the drive home was the hairiest part. But I feel like, so that's like A Lick and a Prayer, the PI and co-production is coming, and this year alongside Bricklin is coming. Yeah,
they're kind of in the same time frame, which is as always stressful. Like when you've got two edits for the same client at the same time.
Right.
I think similar thing happened with Backyard History and Car Wash Wars, if you recall. But I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
That's their cycle. And if you're lucky enough to get two projects or be attached to two projects,
you figure it out.
Figure it out and just...
Before moving on, I feel like the story of Chris Dart being able to take, there's something here, something more dialed back, or stripped down that fits what they need. When I hear that story, it's just like that's the key to being a successful writer in terms of content for broadcasters. You can't be precious, and you have to listen to what they want and adjust the creative to do that. I feel like that's something that I think I'm striving for in something like Car Wash Wars, and Paul Gardner and the Bell 5 team were great in giving feedback, and I feel like they made the creative better after I rewrote the script after their notes. Vanessa King is another one I think about. So I just want to kind of give a shout out to the writers that know how to play ball. Taylor Olson is also a key example of also staying true to your vision and being able to compromise.
It's their money, man.
Right, exactly.
These are products. They are creative products. They're meaningful products. They're being paid for by these companies or federal agencies or provincial agencies, whoever is. And I've been on that side too. Mm-hmm. You don't want to say, hey, I like your idea, and then someone sends you a script, and it's not what they promised, and you're paying for it. So why would you pay for something that isn't what you want?
Yeah,
I think it's a dance. Mm-hmm. Because of my corporate experience and my time in Toronto, I understand that side a bit more. Mm-hmm. I'm never one to try and make anyone compromise their creative. If that compromise means there's a show, then I will push for that.
Right, yeah, it's the reality of the situation.
We need to work. And we are not at a stage where our reputations or the reputations of even New Brunswick is established or taken seriously to sit on our high horse or in our ivory tower and say, no, this is my creative.
Right, yeah. And I think all of the successful creatives that are doing something that's still meaningful to them, like Car Wash Wars to me was meaningful. It's just like you also, just to have an enduring career, it's just a lesson in picking your battles and knowing where to dig in and knowing where to not. Just strictly for being pleasant to work with your collaborators, because you can't do it alone. But also, if the drive is to have something that's commercially viable from a broadcaster perspective, it's just something you have to learn that isn't easy to learn for new writers. Like a lot of the new writers that I talk to, I wish I could just give them the cheat code to save 5 years of their life to learn how to play ball. Yeah, that's just a quick aside.
I have so much respect for writers. I mean, I am a guy, I have a lot of ideas. I am very schooled in what's out there and try and stay really current on new movie and TV releases. And I just love the art form and the medium. And I understand writing. I've been a good journalistic writer. I'm good at writing pitch decks. I'm not a script writer, though, so I have so much respect for writers such as you and Vanessa and Taylor and Chris and Clem. You guys are able to put words to a page in that final draft. And, I was really honored that you brought me into the writer's room on Car Wash Wars, because, I'm always, what if this happens? What if this happens? I'm always suggestion guy. I was so happy that some of my weirdo concepts, Druidism. I think Druidism, I brought that to the table.
You definitely incited that. And you brought the Druids. Gull, the character of Gull. Yeah. It was your idea. There's a lot of you in Car Wash Wars, and I think.
Well, and I was so grateful that, frankly, you took my harebrained ideas.
I made sense of it.
You wrote them. You actually wrote the ramblings of a deluded man into something highly hilarious and fun, and that made sense on screen. So I thank you. And I think that's what our collaboration, we have a similar comedic sensibility. Yeah. We're both weirdos. You've bested me on Civilization 7. I've only won on Immortal mode. You've won on Deity mode, but I'll get you maybe this weekend. We just share a lot, right down to like we love Dungeons and Dragons. Like, those type of things. We have a lot of similar interests.
Nerd adjacent.
Yes. And I think probably my biggest harebrained scheme to date of where I wish I was a writer, but I'm not, is crustaceous. I have an innate fear of lobsters. It's a long story, but it goes back to my childhood. The write what you know and write from the heart mentality resulted in this project Crustaceous that you've been a part of, and you're writing, and you've helped me film a proof of concept / short film on it, which is a horror comedy set in a Call of Cthulhu H.P. Lovecraft comedy universe that's in a fictional version of New Brunswick where there's a cult that worships a lobster lord and a young woman who another great collaborator from my hometown, Kristen Green, shout outs to Carlton North. She was in Odon's. I cast her in that after kind of reconnecting when I came back. She was in Car Wash Wars, of course, as Kayla. And she was in the short Crustaceous proof of concept. And, you know, just for me, it's really special to try and bring these things to life. But obviously without Kristen or Megan or you, like none of this would happen because, you know, I just don't have those skills. And Crustaceous, I'm flailing. Taylor's come aboard to help us work on it as director and is helping with the script. So I'm hoping that Crustaceous can move forward. But you're all about, you know, praising the people that come on this podcast. I want to praise you. Yeah. You're not a script doctor. Like you can actually like take someone else's ideas and make them real on page. And we've been, you know, able to make a few of them. Yeah. God help us. And I hope we get to make lots more.
I think Crustaceous, there's still a lot of, you know, interest there. Like every time you bring it up, you know, when we went to primetime last year, it's just like everyone's intrigued by it.
They haven't seen this one yet. Yeah. In the world where everything's been done under the sun, I don't think we've seen this spin. You know?
Yeah, I think that hope for the future of Crustaceous and, you know, maybe Car Wash Wars and anything else.
Well, I mean, I think, look, Car Wash Wars, let's talk a little bit about that because I would like to mention, obviously we launched on Bell 5. We love the show. We put so much into it financially, time-wise, creatively, and like everything. One of the things I'm most proud of, I'd say Car Wash Wars and What We Dreamed of Then, Taylor Olson's film. You know, those are the two things that I'm proudest of that I've been associated with. And both of those go back to my approach of teaming up with people that I believe in and, you know, trying to support them. But Car Wash Wars, you know, it was actually great what happened timing-wise because, you know, we put the show out and we knew we had something good. That time, my old colleague, Elliot Penn, from Apple had been hired by Trailer Park Boys to rebrand SwearNet as Trailer Park Boys Plus, and they were looking for original content. So, you know, Paratactic had retained the license. What was your window with Bell?
90 days.
So after 90 days exclusivity, you had the right to shop it to other platforms. So we took it to Elliot. He's like, this is hilarious. Again, similar traveler. I mean, I don't think he's anywhere. Probably not even on King mode on Civilization 7. But
that's how we rate people's character.
Yeah, their drive. But Elliot saw the merit of the show, and we worked with him to get it out on Trailer Park Boys Plus last year, which I think was a major win for us.
Oh, yeah.
And it just made the show more available. But like again, Bell is fantastic, but only available it's a walled garden.
Yeah.
So it's only available to Bell subscribers, and people would always be like, how do I watch this? How do I watch this? How do I watch this? So it gave us a way where, you know, if you had $5, you could buy your monthly sub and get it out there. And I think that was a great win. I was really proud of being able to do that with you.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And, you know, again, just I don't think it was like nobody was doing us a favor because I used to work with him. But I did know the guy, and he saw how good it was, and that's how it got where it was. And that's because of you and because of, I think, pretty much everybody. I mean, this podcast began as to talk about Car Wash Wars.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, that was the initial.
So I would say everyone that's been on the podcast so far is responsible for that success. I'm really hopeful we can find a path for season 2.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that my fellow voters at the Canadian Academy will have heard our shouts from the wilds of New Brunswick and consider us for best a nomination for best digital series fiction, amongst the other categories as well. Hey, we'll take best craft services, Patrick. We'll take it. You know.
So looking forward, I think you've got two projects you're delivering to Bell right now, and then you had a huge win, I think, which is a big step forward in like the documentary space of you facing the future. You got the telefilm green light. If you could tell us a bit about that project.
Certainly, yeah. So I think I had mentioned Wabanaki Modern with the Beaverbrook Gallery was a project that Clem and I did with Hemmings back in 2022, 23. And that, I just moved back to Fredericton around that time, and I met John LaRue, Dr. John LaRue, who was a head curator at the gallery there, and he was a major part of the Wabanaki Modern project, and frankly became friends with him. Another kindred spirit, great guy, brilliant mind, former architect, art curator, author, sort of like you, multi-hyphenate. And he was working on this project about a gentleman named Anthony Clavette. Anthony Clavette was from St. Basile, up by Edmundston, and he was, like many New Brunswickers, ran away to find his path in the entertainment world and left New Brunswick and went to Montreal, where he became a hair and makeup artist and pretty innovative, actually, in sort of that hippie era. By day, he worked the makeup counter at, I believe, the Hudson's Bay Company in Montreal, painting up the rich ladies of Westmount. By night, he painted a different type of lady down on St. Catherine Street, where he would do that sort of Austin Powers psychedelic body art. Crafted something that was very of then and now, and he was discovered through his professional day job by Estee Lauder, the woman and the company, and he was eventually brought to Madrid, where he became her personal stylist. And that really cemented Anthony's career. He met a lot of people through that advertising commercial world, and eventually got on the radar of David Bowie, and became David Bowie's hair and makeup artist for almost a decade. At the same time, working for artists like Brian Ferry or Annie Lennox, many other seminal artists of the time. A lot of photo shoots, music videos were just starting then. It was pre-MTV, but there were a few. And he worked for some more years and rose to the pinnacle of his craft, and unfortunately died in 1990 of cancer. John, through a colleague of his, Brigitte Clavette, the sister of Anthony Clavette, who Brigitte is and was an instructor at the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design, had kept all of Anthony's materials. It was a huge treasure trove of images and art and designs that he had made. And John discovered this and said, this is an exhibition. And much like with Wabanaki Modern, he thought, this should be a film. We had a great experience working with him on Wabanaki Modern, so he approached Clem and I to see if we thought there would be a documentary. We worked with John, and I think Skylar helped a bit on the teaser, but I think we worked with Hunter Kirkpatrick to create the teaser trailer and a pitch to put into about a year ago. We were working on this pitch to put into the theatrical documentary program with Telefilm, and whatever connections I could, I tried to champion it within Telefilm. But as you know, it's kind of a black box. It goes in, and what comes out is their decision. And we were lucky enough to get the nod that we got the grant. It was a great moment, especially after having finished. Finished. Will we ever be finished with what we dreamed of then? One day. Having got that scripted feature on my belt, it was a great win for me and for Clem, and I think hopefully for you and Megan and the team that we'll try and get the band back together to make this one too, and make this feature. And we're just kind of gearing up. Our first shoots will be in March.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all this. And I just feel you are I feel like a very critical piece to the future of the industry, and kind of shown the grind, the hard work, and albeit probably slower than you'd want, but there is this progress of growth and moving forward, both in your career and the province. So thank you so much, just for your support and bringing me along for the ride.
Stephen, anything for you, my friend. Honestly, I don't want to blow too much sunshine up your Greek butt, but you are an amazing talent in this province and such a huge asset. So, like I said, my whole career has been about finding other people who are smarter or more talented than me and bamboozling them into working with me. So, you're a prime example of that, just like everybody else on Car Wash Wars that I've had the privilege to work with. So, I think Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. I end with high fives. Thank you.